so I can like drop the mic, but okay. So, first of all, one thing that I want to chat about is thanks for having me come out, and thanks for coming out to hear me talk. Because this is a smaller crowd, like if you guys want just, I was going to say heckle, but like I'm looking around at some of the no heckling, because I'll fire back. But if you have questions, like shoot, like I'll blank the presentation and we can go off for it. Let me give this talk will make better context in the venue that I'm going to be giving it next week. I'm going to be giving this talk at the Blue Team Summit in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's a 2-day conference that SANS is putting on, and we're talking all things defense. And this talk is kind of me going to be going a little bit off the rails when I'm there, because quite frankly, if you look at the scoreboard, it's pretty horrible. And it's not our fault as the technologists. I guess we own part of the blame, but really how we've been going about doing things is quite wrong. And so I'll be talking a great deal about that, and then there will be an awkward transition, just spoiler alert, and then I'll talk about what we can do to like have a more graduated response and how we can start playing around and doing things differently. So a bit about myself. Hey, I'm Mick. Alex was kind enough to put a name tag of Mickles, so you can call me that if you'd like, because that makes Alex laugh, and we're all about making Alex Hammerstone laugh. Love you, buddy. Well, I love you. Okay. So for my day job, I run my own consultancy shop, InfoSec Innovations, and I'll chat briefly about that. But when I'm not running my own shop, which does take a lot of time, I'm a SANS certified instructor. I primarily teach 2 different classes, Hacker Techniques and Incident Response, which is 504, and then the new class, which is SANS 555. We sometimes call it the triple nickel. And what that class is all about doing is leveraging your SIM infrastructure and using it in a way that's pretty novel. And a lot of that class informs this talk, and I'll explain why when we get there. And you can follow me on Twitter at BetterSafetyNet. So one of the things that I'm hoping very small in my own way with my company is to slightly push the InfoSec industry, and our motto at InfoSec Innovations is better information security through science, creativity, and caring. And this talk that I'm going to be giving today is really all about the science of InfoSec. Right now there's a lot of stuff that's broken, and if you want the slides, feel free to take a picture or come up after, and I can like. So, but check it out. I always post my talks. So, did I? Here we go. Okay, sorry. I saw some people go, why sad trombone. All right. This isn't posted yet. It will be posted on Monday. So, as I said, I teach classes on incident response. And one of the things that really makes me quite sad is when I go in to do incident response, all too often there's just an overabundance of clues. And people say, well, how would we know that we got attacked? And how would we do this? We don't have the right, infrastructure in our environment. We don't have this, the business won't fund us that. And, yes, it would be great if we all had the funding of government 3-letter agencies. Unfortunately, in the real world, a lot of times our organizations see information security as a cost center. And that's a harsh economic reality that we need to start accepting and actually using to our advantage. And the reason why is quite simple. Every single thing in your network should be generating clues. And what I mean by that is simply this. When an attacker does something, there should be ample chance for you to see it. And it breaks my heart when people say, well, we don't have an IDS in this environment. We don't have a this, we don't have a that, so we don't have a way of seeing it. We don't have detection sensors in our network. I'm here to say that's not true. even your hosts, even your network gear, everything can be used as a form of detection. And I'll get to that in a minute. And part of the reason that I'm like so strident about this is that the old way that we've been doing things just doesn't work. We've always been telling people, hey, you need to find the bad guys at these 3 main layers. You first look in the network, you see them there, and then, okay, we do the memory forensics, and then finally disk. And the thing that's really unfortunate is that the bad guys know our defensive playbook. They know that we're doing this. And so, yes, you can detect them at these layers, and you probably should be looking at it, but the problem is that if this is all you're thinking about, you're missing the boat because there's so much more to it. One of the things that I've been playing around with for, I don't know, about a year is something called the Attack and Defend Matrix. And for those of you who don't know, MITRE has a framework called ATT&CK. And the idea behind the ATT&CK framework, let's see here. Oh, you can't see that. Give me just a second. Okay, let's bigificate this a touch. So MITRE has this framework called ATT&CK, and the whole point of this, if you've not heard of this, you really owe it to yourself to take a look at it, because it's a beautiful framework that allows you to understand the different phases of the post-exploitation phase of an attack. And so you can, it's based off of different operating systems, which is nice, or you can view it in Enterprise Matrix, which shows all OSs. And the thing that's nifty about this is you can actually check and see how these different elements stack up, and then you can test how it looks in your network. So that's the attack element. I first started playing with this at the suggestion of Chris Gates when I was at Nova Hackers talk a little bit ago. And so what I did was I took these, this column right here is all of the attack components. And as you can see, there's quite a few of them. Quite a few. A lot of attack. Bad guys have a lot of tools. And what I did was I stacked them up against all the ways that you should potentially be able to see them. So right here, starting at column M, this is the start of your network detections. And so what we've got here is a scorecard of would you expect it to prevent, and when you tested it, what did you see? And you've got your IDS, IPS, flow data, etc., patch management, config management, on down until you get to this page or this column, which is the host-based detections. Okay, and so the thing that's nifty about this is you have all the different layers of which you can detect, or which you should be able to detect. Now, I wish I had a camera or a monitor that I could reflect your faces, because you're looking at the spreadsheet going, that's an ugly spreadsheet. Yes, I know. I'm actually in the process of porting it to a SQLite instance. So PowerShell has a really, for those of you who know me, I love me some PowerShell. And I've got there's a way that you can have PowerShell work with SQLite that's really nice. And so I'm building out the SQLite tables that support this, and then it'll auto-generate it. It's much more elegant. But it's hard to visualize a database, right? So this is what I show. If you want to play with this, let me know. I can give you resources, but I would encourage you to not, because it doesn't scale well. I've tried it. It's ugly. It's rough, and I'm lazy. I want it to be nice and easy. But what's neat about this is you can use this. If you think about this, this means that you have a lot of ways in your environment that you should at least have a chance of detecting what the bad guys are up to. And here it is pointed out at the host and network layers. This is that spreadsheet in a more consolidated form. And what really strikes me about this is, if you think about it, some of these things that we're spending our money on, Like, we might as well just put a big pile of cash on that table, light it on fire, and like be done with it. Because like, if you think like antivirus and DLP is going to be the thing that fixes stuff for you, like, you know, there has never been any attacker ever in the history of ever that has been able to bypass your IDS, bypass the firewall, and, you know, bypass the network flow detections, and then they go, DLP, oh. Like, that just doesn't happen, right? So what you can do with these sorts of tools is start thinking about, like, where are we spending not just our money, but also our time and effort. Because, you know, right, like, I'm right there along with you guys in the trenches. Like, how many of you guys, like, raise your hands honestly, you feel like there's parts of the day that you're putting blood, sweat, and tears on, and it just does not matter diddly dip, like, at all. And that's rough, right? I don't know what the solution is, because sometimes that checkbox is what's forcing you to do that thing. And I don't know. Like, that's a whole other battle. If you guys got ideas on that, chat with me, because, like, we got to get better. One thing that I will tell you, and this is going to be kind of weird, but I've been doing a lot of research with this, and with the clients that I've been doing this with, the best return on effort for these different things is configuration management. And it's really, like, not sexy. It's not fun. Okay, Alex, who does a lot of GRC stuff, is like, Mick, don't hate on my baby. Yeah, so I'm sorry. Your baby's not ugly.
That's a good point.
Well, there's that too. So I'll tell you this, configuration management is an amazing return on investment. And if you don't believe me, the people that you probably should be chatting with are penetration testers, because with the way most defensive networks are set up, the days of doing like an attack code that you use on someone's machine, they're kind of over. Like, most of the time attackers may use some exploit to get entry, but then once they're in your environment, they're just attacking it through configuration mistakes, because, you know, they're using your own operating system against you, and it works, right? Like, you know, I'm a little ashamed of it. I still laugh though, but like, I'm an older brother, and my younger brother Andy, from time to time when I was growing up, I wanted to torment him. I'd grab his wrists and I'd be like, why are you punching yourself? Why are you punching yourself? Well, that's what the attackers are doing. So lock down your systems, and not just the hosts, but also the networks. I've worked a couple cases in my career where the bad guys were able to actually take over the network devices. Woo, that sucked. Because, like, you know, everybody's doing cleanup on the host, and we're like, how'd they get back in? And, well, they had a free ride right into the network because they were controlling the perimeter. So, I don't know about you guys, but you're probably seeing this long list and saying, like, dang, this is rough. Mick's, like, giving me more homework, and you're probably saying, where do I start? Well, I don't know. That's going to be up to you guys. Figure out what is the easy bit. Chances are somewhere on that list there's something that you looked at it and you didn't wince, you know? You're pretty decent at it, or at least you're not horrible. And I'm very serious about this. Start with what works. We don't have a corporate office yet at InfoSec Innovations, but when we do, I'm telling you right here, right now, there's going to be a plaque right over the main entrance that all the employees are going to see every day they walk in, and it's going to say, suck less today. Right? I don't want perfect, I just want incremental improvements. So start looking at this list and find out, like, what isn't bad. You know, and like, let's talk patches. You know, the bad guys now are weaponizing the patches. And most companies are way too slow when it comes to patching. I had a client that chatted with them, started working with them about 2 months ago, and their average patch deployment time was 9 months. 9 months. And they actually brought me in to defend an audit. Like, they were trying to have me say that, yeah, 9 months seems about reasonable for an organization of this size and complexity. And they probably should have like heard talks I've given, or at least done a little recon on me, because like I went in there, and like when something's a little like sketchy, like those who know me, like the irreverent side of me comes out, and I was like in this boardroom meeting, and I'm like, yeah. Question. So you mean to tell me like if a mommy and a daddy love each other very much, they can have a baby in the time it takes you guys to deploy a patch? And they're like, okay, since you put it that way, it does seem a little less defensible. So, but here's the thing. It's hard. It's really tricky to do patches. Like, shoot, like I'm an IT guy. I got zapped by the last round of patches on this machine. I had to do the Microsoft reinstall type thing because it kept on like, hey, I've got an update for you. And I was like, yeah, I applied it. And it was like, no, a tote's got an update for you. So like if I get hit, other folks can get hit too. So what you have to start doing is getting creative on how you can start solving these problems and making them better. The one point I want to talk about though about patches, a lot of clients ask me how fast do I have to get at fixing patches? How fast can you go? There's a guy by the name of David Holzer who, like, mad props David if you're watching. He does a talk called Pwned in 60 Minutes where he gives this talk on the Tuesday night of like when Microsoft drops a patch. He reverse engineers it live and weaponizes it that day in under 1 hour. So you guys need to start getting faster. And if you are saying like, there's no way we can get that fast, that company that I made the smart aleck remark about the mommy and daddy loving each other, we were able to build a transaction setup so that we could run scripts over and over again and see how fast they could patch. And I'm happy to say that not too long ago they had me come out and they now have a global rollout in under 4 hours. So start having automated regression testing. Yeah, that's not super fun, but I'll tell you this, like you will roll out code faster, you will do break fix better and easier, and don't buy the hype that you have to buy and invest in expensive tools. There's some really cool tools out there that are very low cost or free. If you're familiar with the Apache JMeter project, that's the letter J and then meter, like the meter stick. It's totally free and it can record web transactions, database transactions, emails, whatever you want. And the community is like really cool to work with. So we can fight, we can win. We just have to start looking at all of these layers as ways to detect and win. And you know, like the problem is, in my opinion, when it comes to once we start getting these bits of telemetry. So we've got SIMs, and some organizations do it better than others. But once you get the SIM or have something that allows you to synthesize all this data from, moving back a slide, all these different telemetry sources, we need to start getting more creative on what we do once we detect evil. Because right now, our playbook's pretty limited. It's just, bad IP, firewall, right? That's it, that's all we got. Oh, did you block the firewall? Yeah. Miller time. You know, and that would be awesome if we didn't have, you know, cloud service providers and all of that stuff going on. The thing that scares the daylights out of me, did you guys see the Department of Homeland Security alert that came out 2 days ago where they announced that Russia had been doing a new campaign to take over home routers? Yeah, imagine playing whack-a-mole at that scale. Yay! I'm serious, it's scary when I, like, if you really think about it, like, it's gonna get ugly pretty soon. So we need to start getting a little more creative in how we defend and what we do. So one of the things that I'm gonna share with you in my remaining time is some of the PowerShell scripts and things that I've been playing around with over the last year and a half or so. And if you guys got questions or stuff, let me know. By the way, this is that awkward transition element that I was talking about. So, demo. All right. All right, so can everybody see that okay? Yep. Okay, cool. What I'm about to do is drop into PowerShell, and one of the things, for those of you who don't do a whole lot of PowerShell, I want to explain what I'm doing with this command. I'm invoking PowerShell from PowerShell, and what I'm doing is I've got this EP. What that stands for is execution policy, and I'm putting it in bypass mode. Normally, when you do git execution, all right, I'm All right, so what I'm going to show you is PowerShell, and normally when you do this, you see this. Yay! That prevents anybody from this is a demo system, right? So I'm going full YOLO. Normally what you want to see is restricted or maybe signed, which indicates that it has to be signed code. Man, demo fail already. We're hopping the rails early. What this restricted mode means is, like, if I try to interact with my PowerShell scripts, I'm going to be prevented from doing so. Now, I need to be very, very clear about this. This is not a security feature. It is not a security feature. It is not a security feature. Because when I try to run, let's try to run this one. When I try to run this, it says that it can't be loaded because it's unauthorized access. And what that's saying is you're in this mode that doesn't allow it. So what you do is you simply invoke PowerShell with execution, and this is shorthand for execution policy, to bypass. And once you do that, if you do git execution, you'll see I'm in bypass mode, which now allows me to run or import PowerShell modules. So a lot of times you'll see this happen, and folks don't explain why they're doing that. So the first one I want to talk about is one that I just really love playing with, called pause process. And what pause process allows you to do is I can stop a running program and then actually resume that program at a later date. And the thing that's really nifty about that, at least in my opinion, is that this allows us to have a much wider latitude when it comes to incident response. Have you guys, and I'll tell you, I have done this quite a few times, unfortunately. Have you ever had some indicator trigger and you're like, oh, that's an evil executable, and you squash that executable flat, and then the line of business comes up to you and they're like, why can't we make money anymore? And I'm like, that's me, right? So we've probably, if you haven't done that yet, then you're more, keep up the good work, I guess. We've already seen that details might not be my highest success point. So what we can do is I'm going to start another PowerShell prompt and make a loop that emulates evil, and then I will stop it. Actually, let's do it this way. Notepad, maybe evil. Maybe evil.ps1. Yep, I want to create it. And so what I'm just going to do is, let me make this font a little bigger so everybody can see. I'm going to basically make a loop that always is running while true. So what I'm going to do is write host evil loop and then okay, so what oops, I got to do this. So I've just got this iterator that I'm going to set to 0 at the start of this, and then what I'm going to do is each run of the loop, it's going to print out evil loop number and my iterator number, and then $PID is the process ID of the current script. So I'm making that easier. You'll understand why I did that in just a moment. Then, of course, I have to increment my iterator, and then just so it doesn't scroll off the screen too fast, let's put a sleep in there, value of 1. Now, if I got the syntax right, this will just work. Let's see. Cool. All right, so it's running. And this is, maybe this is malicious malware, maybe this is legit. We don't know. It's just running. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start another PowerShell. And I'm going to cd into my workshop directory. Got to do my execution bypass. And now what I can do is import this module that I've named pause process. Now, the cool thing about pause process is I am using nothing but Windows built-in native components. So the way that this works is once I import this module, I now have a pretty neat thing that allows me. Oops, let me make this font just a touch smaller. All right, so now what I can do is I can pause process. ID is the process ID that I want to pause, and it just stops. And it can stay paused as long as I want it to be. And the cool thing now is that you, as defenders, now have the opportunity to let something be in this suspended state. You can do your investigation, make sure it's malicious, and then you can kill it dead. But let's say you do your investigation and it turns out that everything, like that you had a false alarm or some like false trigger, so you need it to resume. All you do is you unpause that process, and it resumes right where it left off. Now, the cool thing is, this goes a lot deeper than that. So, some of you are saying, okay, that's neat, you're pausing a running process, but what happens when it's paused? Well, what I'm doing here, and this is a really nifty thing, this PowerShell script is actually extending the kernel 32. In the kernel 32 DLL, there is a built-in debugger. And what we're doing actually is attaching a debugger. And if you're not at all familiar with how that works, the cool magic about this is now any input-output gets put on a FIFO buffer. And I've got a real low-tech demo of this, but man, I'm gonna smile if it works right, because it's just so freaking cool. So let's say a potentially evil program named Notepad is running, and we don't know if this is legit or not. So, Notepad running. Evil? Yes? No? Not sure. Okay, so Notepad's running. As long as this Notepad is running as normal, I can expand it, minimize it, I can resize it, I can do whatever. It's running like you would expect. Well, what's interesting is I can take that same pause process utility and use that to pause the Notepad process, but there's something pretty magical that happens. Now, you could do something like this, PS name Notepad, and then you get this process ID, you copy it, you do pause process dash ID. Folks, especially the folks who know me, you know I'm lazy. So I will work pretty hard to make it so that I can be lazy. Yeah, and okay, some people are agreeing a little too heavily. So, okay, we'll talk afterwards. But so you can actually, I've made it so that you can send this from the, here, let me put that up top. I've made it so that you can actually send this from the pipeline. So meaning instead of having to bother with taking that stuff out, you can just do this. Pause process, I hit enter, When you get no output, that means it worked correctly. If there was an error, it would have given you something. Now watch this. This is nifty. I take my mouse, I go back to my notepad, I click it, notepad doesn't pop up. But check this out. I can't talk and type at the same time, sorry. That was not like a dramatic pause. Although maybe it did build a little drama. What you can do is say you're interacting with it and you realize, oh, that notepad is totally important for our business. We got to have notepad running. So you simply unpause it. And then when you go back to notepad, notepad was still taking input. The magic of this is anything that should be coming in from standard in or from the network gets put on a FIFO buffer that just queues and queues and queues. Now, how long that buffer is depends a lot on your OS and how things are configured. So I still have a little bit of tweaking to figure out, like, programmatically an easy way to tell you how big that buffer is when you try to invoke it so that you can know, like, hey, we've got a couple seconds or a couple hours of time to do the analysis. But the thing that's baller about this now is you guys should be ready and willing to pull this trigger quick. And then if things come out like, hey, you know, that was a false, you know, alert, run it, business can resume as normal. Now, I get it, there are some of you who might be working at places where you're doing like real-time messaging and stuff like that, that this would pose a big problem for there. But for most of the folks out there, this gives us a great chance and an opportunity to start playing around and doing things in a much more basically cavalier way, right? Like, part of the problem as defenders is we're having to be very, very targeted on killing stuff. Like, I came really close to getting fired once when I shut down a business critical process, and you know what? Probably rightfully so. That said, like, we need to make things easier on ourselves, and I'm hoping that this is something that you guys can play with and find handy. Now, some things to talk about with this tool. There is a lot of really nifty features that you can do here. I've got this pause processes up in GitHub, and one of the things that I've been spending a lot of time with is like command line arguments or ways that you can invoke this. So you can do things like pause all processes that are running to a particular port or a particular IP address. One of the cooler uses that I got called in from somebody, they were trying to use my tool. They had a sysadmin that was running rogue, and the problem was that they were on a production jump box and they wanted to stop that user. So all instances of that one user, and I very quickly genned it up, tested it, and it works. So like, you can pause all instances of all executables running under a particular user context. Little warning, don't pause yourself. It's kind of fun. System stability issues ensue, we'll say that. Some things to note though. This tool is not perfect. For instance, probably the biggest draw against it is that you have to attach a debug onto the running application. There are programs, and there's even malware out there, that will look for, has a debug been attached or attempt to be attached. And there, while rare, there is malware that will behave differently, like either detonate or delete itself when somebody tries to attach a debug. So you need to be aware of that. The other thing is, not all applications, well, let me put it this way. If the developer of the application wants to, they can make it so that you cannot attach a debugger. Prime example is I tried to use this on a pen test shortly after I wrote it, and I was like, I got lightning in a bottle. You can't stop me. And pride comes before the fall, so I roll onto this system, and I got hit, like my attacks were being blunted, and it was Windows Defender. Now, if you've never gone toe-to-toe with Windows Defender, I need to actually give Microsoft some credit. Like, it is not trivial. I know people are like, oh, Windows Defender. No, it's actually not bad. It's not bad at all. So I was like, oh, Windows Defender, I'm going to pause you. No. As soon as I tried to attach the debug to it using the pause process technique, Defender just threw a big nope. And so I was like, oh, this totally stinks. The system threw all these alerts, and I got caught. And so I was like, man, that stinks. And so at the end of the day, I was doing a debrief with my point of contact there, and they're like, yeah, Mick, like that was rookie hour. I was like, I know, like what? How'd I get caught? And they're like, well, like they got this big pop-up in the lower screen that said like Windows Defender caught malware, and I was like, oh, yeah, so it popped up, huh? Do you guys know what pops up that little warning? It's not Windows Defender, it's Explorer. So next day, Explorer was paused, and I was able to do my campaign of Havoc, and then I unpaused it, and it worked. One of the things that you can do, I want to point out, this is one thing that I believe firmly in is, like I love defense, the blue. I also really like offense, the red, but I'm really a purple kind of guy. I think that they should both interact. If you're into the attack side, there's a really neat use case for pause process. I didn't do it, but a good buddy of mine did it against a shop to quite powerful effect. He got onto the machine and saw that there was one of those next generation antivirus tools that what they do is every now and then they send a heartbeat back up to the it's basically the good guy command and control box, right? So if that heartbeat doesn't happen on a periodic basis, like that is an ultra high priority flag, and they send the cavalry out to that host. Well, what you can do is you can do this. And then, whatever your ID number is, and then sleep, pipe, sleep. These are causing problems here. Let me. Sleep 20, so for 20 seconds it will wake up, and this works great because it will pause, and then you pipe it back to your unpause. And then you put the ID that you want to resume. And so like you have a 20-second window to do Havoc, and then you can wash, rinse, repeat, and it worked great.
You set it on a loop?
Yeah, absolutely. You know how you do that? Let me show you how you do this. All the way at the top, you type while $true, squiggle bracket, close your squiggle bracket. That's it. And that would, I don't know what process ID 23 is, so I'm not feeling YOLO enough to press that. No. But yeah, that's all there is to it. And so it's kind of a cool way of like playing around and doing some interesting things. Now, before I get to the next step, are there any questions so far about this, or like where I'm going and what I'm doing? No? Okay. I hope you guys are digging this. Like, I would love for more people to play with this and like give me feedback. I found out that there's some problems with running this on PowerShell v2, which I'm going to fix. So if you're running Windows 7 and you haven't updated PowerShell, you are v2. So try this non-prod first, please. Non-prod first. If it breaks anything, though, I promise you, I will give you a full refund. It's for free, okay, folks. One thing that, so here's something though that last June I got kind of broke. I was working, and I don't mean financially, I mean like in the spirit. I was working a very rough set of incident responses, and it was at the end of June, and I see some people kind of twitching and nodding. Yeah, that was the NotPetya attack. And the problem with the NotPetya attack is that curb stomped some networks. And a lot of people have this like false notion of like, well, that's just because they're jokers and they don't have good defense. No. Like some of the like Seagrams got hit and like devastated. Maersk, you guys know who Maersk is? What do they do? Shipping. They got hit so hard, I kid you not, that there were multiple tankers that were using sextant and stars to figure out how to go where they needed to be, because they got zapped with the NotPetya. And like Maersk has an actually like pretty cool InfoSec team. Like I actually know a couple people there, and they're a big organization. So this tool as it exists right now does not scale at all. Like what I showed you, like, hey, just type these commands. Nobody's got time for that. And that's the thing that's the shame and sorrow of it is, I'll get you in a second. The tempo of the attacks now is way fast. Globally, if you had the global average for when the NotPetya attack went live to your systems being like total cratered, if you had about 5,000 hosts in your network, you had 10 minutes. Like, we can't respond that fast. So, like, we've got to get faster. And when I answer Alex's question, I'll show you some ideas that I got when doing it.
Kind of missed the window.
Oh,
I was going to ask you for the container.
Oh. Sad trombone. Wah, wah, wah. So for those on the recording, Alex asked, did Maersk container the incident? Should have let you go. You should have been like, ooh, friend override. You got that from me, okay? In the future, any golden pun like that deserves to be given. So, all right. So this is kind of where, like, yes.
Can you run this over the network to pause the process on another computer?
Absolutely you can. So the way that you can do this, so the question is, can you run this across the network? And yes you can. The way that you need to do this is you have two options. Well, there's two good options, and then there's some not so good options. So the best way to do this is to use PowerShell remoting. And that's like really the preferred way to be doing remote interaction with machines. Now, the reason that I had a little bit of a hesitation when I was talking about that is I would say about upper 80%, maybe even 90% of the networks that I go to, I ask them, hey, are you guys using PowerShell remoting? And the Windows admins go, oh, no, that's horrible. That's a security flaw. Like, And I'm like, oh, okay, well, what do you guys use to interact with your machines at scale? And they're like, we use ps-exec. So for those of you who aren't laughing, the problem with ps-exec is that it's over SMB, and it's relatively clear text. PowerShell remoting uses TLS. So it is way stronger, and it's also faster than SMB. It's a much more efficient protocol. Yeah?
So you talked about this in both like defensive and offensive capabilities, right? If they use offensively, what can you do to defend or monitor for it?
Okay, so awesome question. If somebody's using pause process in a malicious way, can you detect this? Absolutely. Can you prevent this? Absolutely. And the answer is how this tool works. It's using a debug process. So what you can do is in the sec-paw on Windows machines, you need to check who has debug privileges. Debug privilege is something that no one, and I do mean no one, except for developers, should have. And the reason why is nobody ever uses it, except for developers, because they need it. And the magic of debug privilege is that it allows you to attach debuggers. You can also do things like import DLLs, which attackers love to do. So that should only be allowed for developers and maybe some administrators. from time to time there's some security tools that require that too, but it should be rather few and far between. So you should restrict debug. That prevents this being used in a malicious way. But then you can also change the audit levels to look for when debug is used. I'll be honest, one of my favorite ways to detect malware is even detecting when somebody checks to see if they can do a debug level is like sketch. Like there's no, like, hey, can I do debug? Oh, totes, I'm just gonna do email. Like that never that like is the instant that you're just like, no. So debug, catch it. If you can't, come up and chat with me after. But there's actually some really good TechNet articles on that. And then if you really are in for a punishing read, there's actually two good resources, but it's long. NSA has one about detecting debug level use. That's a strong read. And then the CERT of Japan, so JP CERT, has this commonly used indicators, like I saw you light up. That's actually on that list. It is baller. It is amazing because it's just like beast mode. Like, here's these things that like are wonky, and like some of them are really like non-intuitive. Like, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that's so. Like one of them that like I read it and it was like when somebody does WinVer, and I'm like, well that, oh yeah, like you know which version of Windows you're running. Like Bob from accounting doesn't go, you know what today I need to do? I need to know what version of Windows. Like he's like, yeah, well, or playing around with the net sessions and net use. Like there's all kinds of fun stuff in there. So this is very detectable. But the problem is this doesn't scale terribly well. So doing this by hand, one-off is, that's just not my style. So what I've got for you is the next little bit of research, and I've been toying around with this for a while, and I think I'm knocking on the door to something about pretty cool right now. Windows has a variety of eventing models that you can do, and I'm going to be honest. You know, like on those old maps, you know, and like in the middle of the sea, they have a "Here be monsters" kind of thing. Yeah, so this next bit I will be posting probably Tuesday onto GitHub. You need to test in a non-prod environment because Windows event registers, actually Charles and I have cried many a tear over this. If you do them right, they're awesome, and there's, like, you cannot measure the CPU and memory impact. Like there's nothing. Like you do perfmon, you see nothing. You change one little tiny thing, and then like 30% CPU, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And the problem is, yeah, the debug on that sucks. So really, I hate to admit it, and I'm not too proud of this, but I've really been brute forcing the space and like trying to figure this out. So what I've actually done is I wrote a test harness. And it takes a long time to set it up, otherwise I'd show it, but I'll have to make like a YouTube and time lapse it. But it basically does a performance check prior to the event counter being launched, and then one after it's been done. And you can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. So rather than show a demo, which is, I actually want to show you the cool stuff about it. There's a thing that's cool within Windows that I quite like called WQL. Now, if you've done anything with databases like SQL, structured query language, you'll be somewhat ready for WQL. WQL is Windows query language. Now, the downside is Windows query language is super twitchy. So what you really need to do is Microsoft Press released a paper. It's a PDF for free that's how to use WQL and set it up. But what you can do is just literally your imagination. It's literally limited by that. So in this instance, let's make this a little more readable. What I'm doing is I've created a WMI event that's going to trigger, in this case, it's going to query, where's my query? Here's my query. It's looking from the instance creation event table, which this is run anytime you run an executable. Any executable at all, it goes here. And then within one. So what I'm doing is every 1 second, I'm just checking. Now, some of you may think, well, Mick, that's like pretty frequent. No, that's super light touch. This is a very, very low and easy way to check. And so what we've got here is this query where it's a Win32 process, meaning it's some executable, and it's not running from the Windows directory. So like if you wanted to catch anything running from program files or whatever, you could do that here. I deliberately cast a very wide net so that I could make this a nice, easy test. But the magic is now you have full control over, like, did it come from a publisher? Did it run from this location? Is it making too many file reads? Is it doing too many network things? Literally, whatever you want, you can build in. And you know what? If you don't know how to do that sort of stuff, you now know a guy who can help you build that up. So reach out to me, and chances are your detection will be valuable to other people. So you can now have this thing auto pause. You can investigate and then unpause if things turn out okay, and then you would adjust the query. Life goes on great. So any questions about that? No? No? All right. Cool. Well, I don't have a whole lot else to say other than like my rambling crowsing where I get all upset about stuff because I'm not liking where the industry's going. So demos mostly work. That's pretty cool. So here's the deal. When it comes to being defenders, we're going to have to up our game because, quite frankly, it's embarrassing, And again, it's not your fault, but if you're going to start, drawing a paycheck, let's start earning it. Let's start doing something that matters because what we're doing right now, we're burning a lot of time, effort, and we're not getting much out of it. So start figuring what you're in for. Some organizations just only care about compliance. And you know what? If you're in a place that's just after that and only that, you got to ask yourself, what do you want to do? If you want to just ride that gravy train or whatever, that's fine. I won't think anything less of you. That said, if you've got a little fire in your belly, if you're willing to do something that actually makes a damn, go out and get it because there are plenty of companies out there that care about real security. And the real good advantage is right now we're at negative unemployment. So you should be able to get the job of your dreams. Please go out and find something fun and interesting because you owe it to yourself. You're only on this side of the sod once, right? So go out, have fun, hack. I hope that you guys found these tools and ideas, even though they're a little silly and weird, that they might be something interesting because I fully expect I hope to have this out in a real ready grade. I mean, I've already got clients that are using this as part of their defensive fabric, but a real slick install, slick setup, probably in the next couple months. We're really close, and I could use some help. Yeah.
Have you seen anything other than Defender Chapter?
Have I seen anything then?
Windows Defender.
Oh yeah. So have I pause process get stopped by other things? Absolutely. All right. So for starters, the fact that somebody's running PowerShell, that's weird. So any user behavior analytics tool that's worth its weight in electrons, I guess, or whatever, should be able to detect that. The other thing is I've seen next-gen tools see that this is making a debug request, and that's hella weird. What?
Are you positive?
Am I positive?
Like electrons?
Yeah.
You missed it
I
again.
missed it again, Alex. You got to get more caffeine in you. So yeah, I have seen things catch this. That said, even though my client list kind of skews to the, like, I'm a boutique security company, and my client list skews to the more like doing interesting things with security, they're still not catching this. So like for most organizations, this would work pretty well. Any other questions? No? All right. Talk is available. Well, will be available next week after I'm under embargo. Science doesn't want me giving this talk out just yet, but I figured you guys could have a sneak peek. And it'll be a different version of this talk, but these slides will be available. I hope you download them. I hope you download the tool and play with it. Let me know what works. Like, I'll be honest, like, a hate-filled, like, your tool sucks, I hate it, here's why, and let me enumerate all the problems, I'll be like, sweet, bug report. Like, I got no ego in on this one at all. So please just let me know what I can do to, like, make this better and more useful for y'all, because, like, I don't know, I want to be clear, this is not the answer, but I'm just throwing stuff on a wall and seeing what sticks, and you guys are going to be part of that. Does this stick? So thank you for your time, and I'll be hanging out.